So we are going to do something a little different for Friday's Bordeaux offer, because the last few offers have been like really great value wines in Bordeaux. And not to say that this is not a great value wine, but it's a little different than the wines we've had in the past or offered in the past. This is Le Petit Mouton Rothschilds. And yes, it is the Mouton Rothschilds. The second wines of Bordeaux have now reached a completely new level where you're talking Carrois is selling for over $300, Pavillon Rouge is selling for $250, and there's a good reason for that. That is because these second wines of first growths are now almost at the level of their Grand Vin. And this is was the tailing end of the second wines that kind of caught up to the Grand Vin. Mouton in the last, I would say, like 10 years, these has really turned it on. Realistically, in some vintages, has been basically the top first growth. I know that, like every time, like when Kyle and I go to Bordeaux and we go through, the UGC tastings of Premier when we're tasting barrel samples, and at the end we're like, okay, so like what was the best first growth? Was it Margaux? Was it Aubryon? Was it Latour? Was it Mouton? And recently, Mouton is kind of like edged the way up. And so we love this property because Mouton is very expressive. And for Pauillac, when you think of Pauillac, you think of like big, hearty wines, you got that currant, you got the roulette pencil and tar and blah, blah, blah. But there's elegance too also in Pauillac. And I find in Mouton recently that even though the wines have power, they have elegance as well. So while we're, I'm talking about Mouton, we're also talking about Le Petit Mouton. And Le Petit Mouton is not petite at all. The wine is absolutely gorgeous. It's mainly consisting of the young vines from Mouton Rothschild. So let me talk a little bit about this, because this is kind of an interesting conversation, because when you're talking young vines in France, you're talking vines that are like 30 and 40 years old, what they consider young vines. And when Mouton did a replantation, they planted high density. So they're planting 10,000 vines per hectare. So that's really high density planting. And essentially what they're doing is they're waiting for these vines to get old enough to be like put into the Grand Vin. But now farming is so good that they can I can now pick the right clones and the right exposition that I want the vineyard to be. And so it's kind of like, when you're doing something new you're not inventing something new, but you're doing something new that is going to improve the wine of the Grand Vin, but you're putting it into the second wine. The second wine sometimes could be just as good as the first wine. And with 2019, it's very close. It's very close. There's a reason why Mouton was elevated to a first growth. And I'm telling you right now, it's so evident in this wine. The 2019 Le Petit Mouton is 68% Cabernet Sauvignon, and that's 32% Merlot. It gets all the royal treatment that the Grand Vin gets. It's all hand-picked, hand-selected, sorted barrels, special barrels for Mouton. Like when you go into the barrel room, you can't take pictures, because it's like church. But I'll tell you something, the wine is fantastic and very much Mouton. It has that Mouton Asian spices and black currants and graphite and, oh God, it's bursting from the glass. And 19s, again, I mentioned this before in previous vintages, 19s have not shut down. These wines are so expressive right now. You can drink this wine today. The other thing about this wine also is its label. Mouton Rothschild commissions an artist for every vintage, right? But this label doesn't change. This label is the same. And the reason why is the Baroness really loved this label. This was done by Jean Carlu back in 1924. It was, very much the Art Nouveau of its day, and it's stayed with the label every year. And actually, it's when you look at it, you think, wait, that actually is really cool. I would love to have that poster in my house, So yes, cool label. 97 points for a second wine. It's not a second wine. It's not. It's its own thing. It's just a different expression of the vineyard. Eventually will be part of Mouton. But how can you make that selection? I wonder, this is really good, this is really good, this is really, this goes, But the thing is, Mouton 2019 sells for $600 a bottle. $600? This doesn't. I mean, it's not cheap, but it's Mouton. It's like Louis Vuitton, Patek Philippe. You can buy cheap Patek, for 50 grand? Oh, the staff's gonna be so happy at the end of the day. This wine is so good. Oh, we don't have a bunch of it. They're in 6-packs. It's just fantastic wine.